Nas here, native English speaker and a bookworm. Now, for those of you who follow me, for those of you who tune in weekly for our Sherlock Holmes short stories that I am reading for the first time with you, you would know that I messed up last week. There was one part in the reading where I thought it was Sherlock Holmes who saw the newspaper article, but it was actually Watson. I don't know how I got that so confused and so messed up. All I'm going to say is that sometimes these Sherlock Holmes stories are really complicated. Complicated even for a bookworm like me. Now, that's no excuse. Well, what's interesting, though, is that this week's story is actually told by Sherlock Holmes, not by Watson. It's one of the rare short stories which are told by Holmes himself. So that should make it interesting, right? So yeah, today we're going to do a dramatic reading of The Adventure of the Blanched Soldier. And like I said, this is one of those rare Sherlock Holmes stories told by Sherlock Holmes himself and not by Dr. Watson. It's a chilling mystery. A soldier returns home from war, but something is wrong. His skin is deathly pale, blanched. His behavior is strange, and soon he vanishes without a trace. So, as always, Sherlock Holmes is not fooled by appearances. So, what lies behind the mystery of the Blanched Soldier? Get comfortable, grab a cup of tea, listen carefully because every clue matters. Now, I'd love to know, is this your first Sherlock Holmes short story with me, or are you one of my regulars? Okay, beautiful people, if you have your cup of tea, if you're ready, let's do this. The Adventure of the Blanched Soldier. The ideas of my friend Watson, though limited, are exceedingly pertinacious. And pertinacious means he has a very strong opinion or even a course of action. Pertinacious. And by the way, this is why I love my Kindle. I am reading on the Kindle app on my laptop, but I love my Kindle because I can easily check vocabulary when I'm reading in other languages. So for a long time, he has worried me to write an experience of my own. Perhaps I have rather invited this persecution, since I have often had occasion to point out to him how superficial are his own accounts and to accuse him of pandering to popular taste instead of confining himself rigidly to facts and figures. So, Watson has been pushing me being Sherlock Holmes, the narrator, the author, to write my story because, and maybe I deserve it because I often ridicule him, I criticize him, I tell him that he panders to popular taste, maybe he embellishes. He needs to stick to facts and figures. So he said, try it yourself, Holmes. He has retorted, and I am compelled to admit, I am forced to admit, that having taken my pen in my hand, I do begin to realize that the matter must be presented in such a way as may interest the reader. So there's this concession. Sherlock Holmes concedes, or he admits, that you can't just stick to facts and figures. You've got to make the story interesting for the reader. Well, the following case can hardly fail to do so, as it is among the strangest happenings in my collection, though it chanced that Watson had no note of it in his collection. Well, I'm not going to bore you. This case cannot bore you because it's one of the strangest. Speaking of my old friend and biographer, he's referring to Watson, I would take this opportunity to remark that if I burden myself with a companion in my various little inquiries, it is not done out of sentiment or, and this is a lovely word, caprice. Caprice, a sudden or unaccountable change of mood or behavior. Caprice. That's a lovely word. Ah, the adjective is capricious. So someone who is capricious has sudden or unaccountable changes of mood or behavior. All right. But it is that Watson has some remarkable characteristics of his own, to which in his modesty he has given small attention amid his exaggerated estimates of my own performances. All right, so what does this mean? It means that Watson often underestimates how remarkable he is. He is so focused on talking about how amazing I am, and he often exaggerates how amazing my abilities are, that he doesn't give himself enough credit. It's very interesting seeing Sherlock Holmes' point of view for the first time, right? So a confederate who foresees your conclusions and course of action is always dangerous, but one to whom each development comes as a perpetual surprise, so perpetual, continuous, and to whom the future is always a closed book, is indeed an ideal helpmate. So here he says that he really does appreciate Watson. And a confederate, I'm going to say that someone who is a companion, someone that you confide in, and someone who can read your mind is kind of dangerous, okay? But is also someone who is very helpful. I find from my notebook that it was in January 1903, just after the conclusion of the Boer War, that I had my visit from Mr. James M. Dodd, a big, fresh, sunburned, upstanding Brighton. Now, once again, this is going to excite me, and you guys know why. I'm South African, and the Boer War was part of our history and one of the history lessons that I was forced to study. So, I wonder why Doyle keeps referring or makes South African references. I think someone needs to look into that and tell me why. The good Watson had at that time deserted me for a wife, the only selfish action which I can recall in our association. I was alone. Okay, wow, this blows my mind. I had no idea that Watson had ever married. This is a revelation to me. And like I keep saying to you guys, I'm reading all of this for the first time. It's new to me. So he'd deserted me for a wife. I love the way he phrases this. Nobody deserts you for a wife. He just got married. I mean, come on, Sherlock Holmes, get over yourself. I really like you, but you do exaggerate things. Oh, and it's a selfish action. Wow, maybe you, Sherlock Holmes, needs to find yourself a wife. So it is my habit to sit with my back to the window and to place my visitors in the opposite chair where the light falls upon them, so they kind of in the spotlight, all right? Mr. James M. Dodd seemed somewhat at a loss how to begin the interview. I did not attempt to help him, for his silence gave me more time for observation. So this gentleman seems really confused. He doesn't know how to start the discussion, how to, oh, there's a lovely idiom here, break the ice, right? And I did not attempt to help him. I didn't try to help him because you know what? His silence gave me a chance to watch him. I have found it wise to impress clients with a sense of power, so I gave him some of my conclusions. From South Africa, sir, I perceive I'm going to just do this like this victory kind of thing each time he talks about South Africa. I am South African, by the way, for those of you who haven't realized that yet. Yes, sir, he answered with some surprise. Imperial yeomanry, I fancy. Exactly. Middlesex corpse, no doubt. That is so, Mr. Holmes. You are a wizard. So he makes these assumptions, and this guy is impressed. I smiled at his bewildered expression. When a gentleman of virile appearance enters my room with such tan upon his face as an English sun could never give, and with his handkerchief in his sleeve instead of in his pocket, it is not difficult to place him. This is so true. The English sun does not give anyone a tan, but that beautiful, blazing, rich South African sun, you get a tan in 2 minutes, I promise you. And this thing about a handkerchief in one sleeve, yes, we do that. We don't really put our handkerchiefs or tissues in our pockets. We kind of tuck it in our sleeves. I hadn't even realized that that was something we do until reading this. Okay. You wear a short beard, which shows that you are not a regular. You have the cut of a riding man. As to Middlesex, your card has already shown me that you are a stockbroker from Throgmorton Street. What other regiment would you join? So, yeah, here are all the clues. You see everything. I see more than you, but I have trained myself to notice what I see. However, Mr. Dodd, it was not to discuss the science of observation that you called upon me this morning. What has been happening at Tewkesbury Old Park? So, okay, I do notice everything. I've trained myself to notice everything, but you didn't come here to talk about my powers of observation, about how I notice everything. You came to me for something. So tell me what has been happening there. Mr. Holmes, my dear sir, there is no mystery. Your letter came with that heading, and as you fixed this appointment in very pressing terms, you said it was urgent. It was clear that something sudden and important had occurred. Yes, indeed, but the letter was written in the afternoon, and a good deal has happened since then. If Colonel Emsworth had not kicked me out— Kicked you out? Well, that is what it amounted to. He is a hard nail, is Colonel Emsworth. Now, a hard nail, I don't use that phrase, but there is another idiom which is similar to a hard nail, and it's a tough nut. He's a tough nut. The greatest martinet in the army in his day, and it was a day of rough language too. I couldn't have stuck the colonel if it had not been for Godfrey's sake. Okay, I lit my pipe and leaned back in my chair. Perhaps you will explain what you are talking about. My client grinned mischievously. I had got into the way of supposing that you knew everything without being told, said he, slightly mocking, slightly sarcastic. But I will give you the facts, and I hope to God that you will be able to tell me what they mean. I've been awake all night, puzzling my brain, trying to figure it out, and the more I think, the more incredible does it become. When I joined up in January 1901, just 2 years ago, young Godfrey Emsworth had joined the same squadron, so they were in the army together. He was Colonel Emsworth's only son, Emsworth, the Crimean VC. And he had the fighting blood in him. So he had that soldier mentality. It was in his genes, in his veins, in his DNA. So it is no wonder he volunteered. There was not a finer lad in the regiment. He was great. He was amazing. We formed a friendship, the sort of friendship which can only be made when one lives the same life and shares the same joys and sorrows. He was my mate, and that means a good deal in the army. He was my mate, he was my friend. By the way, I do have a free downloadable PDF with some of the most common phrases that are used in Sherlock Holmes, but they might not be familiar to you. So the free downloadable PDF will give you an opportunity to check out all these phrases and to understand some of the quintessentially British phrases that are being used. The link is in the description. It's free. Go ahead and grab it. Okay, so here we took the rough and the smooth together for a year of hard fighting. The rough and the smooth, the good times and the bad times. Then he was hit with a bullet from an elephant gun in the action near Diamond Hill outside Pretoria, my country again. I got one letter from the hospital at Cape Town. Yeah. And one from Southampton. If you've been to Cape Town, do let me know in the comments below. Since then, not a word, not one word, Mr. Holmes, for 6 months and more. And he, my closest pal, I haven't heard from him for 6 months. He got shot with an elephant gun near Pretoria. And then for some reason, he was transferred to Cape Town, which is on the opposite end of the country. Okay. Well, when the war was over and we all got back, we all returned, I wrote to his father and asked where Godfrey was. No answer. I waited a bit and then I wrote again. This time I had a reply, short and gruff. So if someone speaks to you gruffly, they're not being very pleasant. Okay. So if the reply was short and gruff, it was almost rude, not very polite, not very friendly. Godfrey had gone on a voyage around the world, and it was not likely that he would be back for a year. That was all. I wasn't satisfied, Mr. Holmes. The whole thing seemed to me so damned unnatural. He was a good lad, and he would not drop a pal like that. And so the answer from his father was that he'd gone on a voyage around the world. He wouldn't be back for a year. It's a strange explanation. So he says he wasn't satisfied. It just seemed strange, unnatural. This was a good lad, a good kid, a good person, and he would not drop a pal like that. So he wouldn't, okay, let's welcome 21st century. He wouldn't ghost me. Yeah. Do you know that word ghost? Do you like it? Have you ever been ghosted? Join the conversation. So it was not like him. If it's not like someone, it's not, I don't like him. So there's a difference here. I like him. I don't like him. I don't like him. I'm not going to go out on a date with him. I don't want to be friends with him. I don't like him. But not like him means it's very strange. It's not his usual character. So it's not like me to wear dresses. I don't do it very often. Okay. It's not like him to pay the bill. So he's not someone who usually pays the bill. Okay. So it's not like him. It's not his character. Then again, I happen to know that he was heir, listen to the pronunciation here, not heir to a lot of money. And also that his father and he did not always hit it off too well. So if you hit it off, it means you get along. The old man was sometimes a bully, and young Godfrey had too much spirit to stand it. So the father was a bully, and Godfrey did not just keep quiet and accept it. He had too much spirit. He probably spoke back. He probably stood up to his father. No, I wasn't satisfied, and I determined that I would get to the root of the matter, the root, the bottom, the roots of a tree, the bottom of the tree, right down to the basics. It happened, however, that my own affairs needed a lot of straightening out. I had to sort out a lot of my own problems, especially after 2 years' absence. I had been away for 2 years. So it is only this week that I have been able to take up Godfrey's case again. But since I have taken it up, I mean to drop everything in order to see it through. So, since I have returned to this matter, I plan to drop everything, stop doing everything else in order to see it through. You want to see it through till the end. You want some kind of conclusion. Mr. James M. Dodd appeared to be the sort of person whom it would be better to have as a friend than as an enemy. His blue eyes were stern and his square jaw had set hard as he spoke. So he seemed very determined. Well, what have you done? I asked. My first move was to get down to his home, Tewkesbury Old Park near Bedford, and to see for myself how the ground lay. So the lay of the land, the lay of the ground, what's really happening. I wrote to the mother, therefore. I had had quite enough of the curmudgeon of a father. Now, we have heard this word before in other short stories with Sherlock Holmes, and a curmudgeon is a bad-tempered person, a surly person, not somebody I want to hang out with, okay? And I made a clean frontal attack. So I did not mince my words. Oh, wow, that's a beautiful idiom. If you mince your words, you don't get straight to the point. Wow, that just popped up. That's what I love about these readings. Not only are you listening to the story, and not only am I trying to explain it to the best of my ability, considering that I am reading it for the first time, but every now and then my native English brain just kicks in and I offer you all kinds of idioms. So if you liked that one, you know what you need to do. You need to hit that like button or say something in the comment section below. So I made a clean frontal attack. I didn't mince my words. I told her exactly what I was thinking. Godfrey was my chum, my friend, my pal. I had a great deal of interest, which I might tell her of our common experiences. I should be in the neighborhood. Would there be any objection, etc., etc.? So I told her I wanted to meet her. In reply, I had quite an amiable answer from her. So it wasn't short and it wasn't gruff. It was the opposite of what the father had said. And an offer to put me up for the night. Wow, she invited him to stay over. If you put someone up for the night, you're inviting them to be your guest. And so that was what took me down on Monday. Tewkesbury Old Hall is inaccessible. It is 5 miles from anywhere. There was no trap at the station. Now, this is why I like to read these stories and explain them to you, because when you see the word trap and you start Googling what trap means, you're going to see things like a mouse trap, a verb, trap a person, get trapped into a marriage, whatever, trap door. But that's not what a trap is. A trap would be a horse and carriage. Let's see what they say here. Right. Now, this is the problem because here it says that a trap is a device designed to catch and hold animals like a mouse trap, right? But it could also be an unpleasant situation from which it is hard to escape, but that's not the definition, okay? It could also be a container used to collect something, but that's also not what we're looking at. Finally, we get to the right definition for a trap. It's a light, two-wheeled carriage pulled by a horse or pony. Now, this is the problem when students check definitions and there are 4 or 5 and they're not sure which one it is. Well, then what you need to do is to reread the sentence, thinking about the definition and does it make sense? Okay, so that didn't make sense. Then what else do we have? A container? No. A bunker on a golf course? No. Ah, number 4. A light two-wheeled carriage pulled by a horse or pony. Now, because we read the sentence in context, we read the word trap, in context, we understood that it was a type of transportation. Fantastic. So now there was no trap at the station, so I had to walk carrying my suitcase, and it was nearly dark before I arrived. It was a great wandering house. So if it's a great wandering house, then it's a house that's going off in different directions. What does it mean if you wander? You're not walking in a straight, organized line in a certain direction. You're just going wherever you feel like. Standing in a considerable park. So this wasn't just a garden. Wow, it was a whole park. I should judge it was all sorts of ages and styles, starting on a half-timbered Elizabethan foundation and ending in a Victorian portico. Inside it was all paneling and tapestry and half-effaced old pictures, a house of shadows and mystery. There was a butler, old Ralph, who seemed about the same age as the house. Wow, wow, what an interesting way to say that someone is old. But it gets worse. And there was his wife, who might have been older. Oh gosh. She had been Godfrey's nurse, and I had heard him speak of her as second only to his mother in his affections. So the only person that he loved more than this woman was his mother. So I was drawn to her in spite of her queer appearance. So he wasn't very comfortable with the way she looked. He didn't like it, but because he'd heard such great things about her from Godfrey, he felt affectionate towards her. He was drawn to her. If you're drawn to someone or something, you like it. The mother, I liked also. See, there's the word like and also. So drawn to someone, you like someone. A gentle little white mouse of a woman. His descriptions of these people are amazing. It was it was only the colonel himself whom I barred. Now, barred, what does it mean? This is not common English vocabulary. I understood what it meant because I read the entire sentence. So, he likes everyone, but it was only the colonel that he barred. So I'm going to guess he did not like. What are your thoughts? Now, again, bar, it's not the noun. We're looking for a verb. And do we have anything? A room in a pub? Nope. Nothing here. Nothing here. Courtroom? Nothing here. The verbs, to fasten something, to forbid someone, exclude. Exclude. Maybe. Okay. Okay, except for. Except for. His kids were all gone now, bar one, except. Okay, so he liked everyone except the colonel. We had a bit of Barney right away, and I should have walked back to the station if I had not felt that it might be playing his game for me to do so. So we had a bit of Barney right away, a quarrel, a noisy quarrel, and I should have gone back to the station, but I think that was his game plan. That's what he wanted me to do. I was shown straight into his study, and there I found him, a huge, bow-backed man with a smoky skin. Wow, I love the way he describes people. Smoky skin, instead of saying gray, pallid, smoky skin, and a straggling gray beard, seated behind his littered desk. And Doyle loves to use the word littered, a desk that has stuff all over it. My desk is littered. You have no idea how littered my desk is. There are pens, there are a couple pairs of glasses. I'm happy to show you. There's my massage ball, which I'm trying to use for my physio for my hand. There's a mouse pad. Like I said, some pens. I'm not even kidding. Some diamond earrings here. Air conditioning remote, mouse, two mice, MacBook. Can you see? Keypad, keyboard. It's littered. A red veined nose jutted out like a vulture's beak, and two fierce gray eyes glared at me from under tufted brows. I could now understand why Geoffrey seldom spoke of his father. Not a nice guy. Well, sir, said he in a rasping voice. Okay, someone rasps when they are a smoker. I should be interested to know the real reasons for this visit. I answered that I had explained them in my letter to his wife. Yes, you said that you had known Godfrey in Africa. We have, of course, only your word for that. I have his letters to me in my pocket. Kindly let me see them. He glanced at the two which I handed him, and then he tossed them back. Well, what then? He asked. I was fond of your son Godfrey, sir. Many ties and memories united us. Is it not natural that I should wonder at his sudden silence and should wish to know what has become of him? I mean, we were friends, we got along really well, we have lots of memories together. I really do want to know about why he ghosted me, what's happened to him. I think it's quite natural. I have some recollection, sir, that I had already corresponded with you, and I told you what had become of him. He has gone upon a voyage round the world. His health was in a poor way after his African experiences, and both his mother and I were of opinion that complete rest and change were needed. Kindly pass that explanation on to any other friends who may be interested in the matter. I recall that I corresponded with you. I replied to your letter. I told you what had become of him. And then he repeats, is it a lie? We shall soon find out. Certainly, I answered, but perhaps you would have the goodness, you would be kind enough to let me have the name of the steamer. Pause a moment here. What do you think steamer means? He's gone on a voyage. So the name of the steamer would be the name of the ship. Well done. And of the line, the shipping line. Well done. By which he sailed, together with the date. I have no doubt that I should be able to get a letter through to him. So if you give me this information, I should be able to contact him. My request seemed both to puzzle, confuse, and to irritate my host. His great eyebrows came down over his eyes, and he tapped his fingers impatiently on the table. He looked up at last with the expression of one who has seen his adversary make a dangerous move at chess and has decided how to meet it. So he does not like the idea of this gentleman contacting Godfrey. Many people, Mr. Dodd said, he would take offense at your infernal pertinacity, just like Sherlock Holmes said at the beginning of the book the same, pertinacity, and would think that this insistence had reached the point of damned impertinence. Many people would think that you are crossing a line, that you are being impertinent, that you are being pushy, that you are being bullying almost. You are being rude. There's a lack of respect. Impertinence. You must put it down, sir, to my real love for your son. Exactly. I have already made every allowance upon that score. I've allowed you to keep going with this because I've made allowance because of your love for my son. I must ask you, however, to drop these inquiries, to just stop asking these questions. Every family has its own inner knowledge and its own motives, which cannot always be made clear to outsiders, however well-intentioned. So, every family has its own reasons for doing what they do, and we can't tell that to outsiders. It can't always be made clear to outsiders. It's quite honestly not the business of outsiders, even if your intentions are good. My wife is anxious to hear something of Godfrey's past, which you are in a position to tell her, but I would ask you to let the present and the future alone. Such inquiries serve no useful purpose, sir, and place us in a delicate and difficult position. So my wife wants to talk to you. She wants to hear about Godfrey's past, but just that. Don't talk about the present. Don't talk about the future. So I came to a dead end, Mr. Holmes. There was no getting past it. I could only pretend to accept the situation and register a vow inwardly, promise myself an inner vow that I would never rest until my friend's fate had been cleared up. So on the surface, I said, okay, no problem, but I made a vow to myself. I promised myself that I would not give up. I would not rest until I knew what had happened to my friend. This mystery had been cleared up, had been explained. When you clear up something, you explain it. It was a dull evening. We dined quietly, the three of us, in a gloomy, faded old room. The lady questioned me eagerly about her son, but the old man seemed morose and depressed. Now, you know the word depressed, and there's the word and. So morose is going to be a word very similar to depressed, right? Think of a synonym. So do you think he was upbeat and energetic and lively, or was he quiet? Let's look at the definition. He was sullen, silent, ill-tempered, bad mood. Okay. I was so bored by the whole proceeding that I made an excuse as soon as I decently could and retired to my bedroom. You retire to your bedroom, you go to your bedroom, you go to sleep. So some people would say I went to bed. Some people will say I retired to bed, to my bedroom. It's got nothing to do with retirement, okay? It was a large bare room on the ground floor, as gloomy as the rest of the house. But after a year of sleeping upon the felt, and here we go, because felt is an Afrikaans word. It's a Dutch word. Afrikaans is similar to Dutch. I am fluent in Afrikaans. I studied it for 10 years. So veld is a field. Ek slaap in die veld. I sleep in the field. Ek slaap is sleep, in die veld. Die is the in Afrikaans or in Dutch. So veld, yes, field. Mr. Holmes, one is not too particular about one's quarters. So there was nothing amazing about the room, but having slept in the field for a year during the war, I'm not very fussy. I'm not too particular. Fussy, very nice British English word. Fussy. People who are fussy want things done in a certain way. Um, They are, how shall I put it? High maintenance. High maintenance people. You have to do a lot to make them happy. So I opened the curtains and looked out into the garden, remarking that it was a fine night with a bright half moon. Then I sat down by the roaring fire with the lamp on a table beside me and tried to distract my mind with a novel. I was interrupted, however, by Ralph, the old butler who came in with a fresh supply of coals. I'm going to assume that was for the fireplace. I thought you might run short in the night time, sir. It is bitter weather, and these rooms are cold. He hesitated before leaving the room, and when I looked round, he was standing facing me with a wistful look upon his wrinkled face. Beg your pardon, sir, but I could not help hearing what you said of young Master Godfrey at dinner. You know, sir, that my wife nursed him, and so I may say I am his foster father. It's natural we should take an interest. And you say he carried himself well, sir? So he behaved well, he performed well in the army, he carried himself well. If you carry yourself well, you can be proud of your behavior, your mannerisms. So if someone carries themselves well, we are impressed with them. We like it. There was no braver man in the regiment. He pulled me out once from under the rifles of the Boers. Okay, so the Boers were the Dutch, the Afrikaners. Or maybe I should not be here. So he saved my life. The old butler rubbed his skinny hands. Yes, yes, sir, that is Master Godfrey all over. That's exactly what he was like. He was always courageous. There's not a tree in the park, sir, that he has not climbed. So the park, these big gardens, nothing would stop him. He was a fine boy, and oh, sir, he was a fine man. I sprang to my feet. Look here, I cried. You say he was. You say you speak as if he were dead. What is all this mystery? What has become of Godfrey Emsworth? I gripped the old man by the shoulder, but he shrank away. I don't know what you mean, sir. Ask the master about Master Godfrey. He knows. It is not for me to interfere. Okay, let's take a breath. What do you think happened to Godfrey? Is he really on the voyage? Or is he in this house? So the butler, he was leaving the room, but I held his arm. Listen, I said, you are going to answer one question before you leave, if I have to hold you all night. Is Godfrey dead? He could not face my eyes. He was like a man hypnotized. The answer was dragged from his lips. It was a terrible and unexpected one. I wish to God he was, he cried, and tearing himself free, he dashed from the room. You will think, Mr. Holmes, that I returned to my chair in no very happy state of mind. The old man's words seemed to me to bear only one interpretation. Clearly, my poor friend had become involved in some criminal or at least disreputable transaction which touched the family honor. So, by saying, I wish he were dead because the way he is living is worse than being dead, the first thing that pops into his head is that he has dishonored his family. He's become such an awful, evil, vile person that he would be better, life would be better for everyone if he were dead. Okay, so he's done something that has besmirched, that's a lovely word, besmirched the family name, given the family a bad name. He's done something awful. That stern old man had sent his son away and hidden him from the world, lest some scandal should come to light. Oh gosh, I love this word. You have no idea how much I love the word lest. It's formal, it's old English, it's such a beautiful word. So, to avoid the risk that some scandal would be heard. Okay, it's such a beautiful word. Lest, not common at all. This might be the only time you hear it, but I love this word. And by now, you guys know that I really do love English. And there's certain words that I truly, truly love. So he sent him away so that people wouldn't, or the scandal would not be exposed. Godfrey was a reckless fellow. He was easily influenced by those around him. No doubt he had fallen into bad hands, into bad company, and been misled to his ruin. It was a piteous business, if it was indeed so, but even now it was my duty to hunt him out and see if I could aid him, help. I am anxiously pondering the matter, or I was anxiously pondering the matter when I looked up. Huh? What? And there was Godfrey Emsworth standing before me? Okay, I give up. Sherlock Holmes, I never know what you're going to say or do next. Or rather than Sherlock Holmes, Doyle, the author. Wow, you just blew my mind. Okay. My client had paused as one in deep emotion. Pray continue, I said. Your problem presents some very unusual features. He was outside the window, Mr. Holmes, with his face pushed against the glass. I have told you that I looked out at the night. When I did so, I left the curtains partly open. His figure was framed in this gap. The window came down to the ground, and I could see the whole length of it. But it was his face which held my gaze, which captured my attention, which grabbed my attention. He was deadly pale. Never had I seen a man so white. I reckon ghosts may look like that. But he wasn't a ghost, but his eyes met mine, and they were the eyes of a living man. He sprang back when he saw that I was looking at him, and he vanished into the darkness. There was something shocking about the man, Mr. Holmes. It wasn't merely that ghastly face glimmering as white as cheese in the darkness. It was more subtle than that. Something slinking, something furtive, something guilty. Now, if you slink away, you're not walking proudly. You are kind of hiding, slinky, like a snake, furtive. So, not straightforward, something guilty. All of these are very negative words. Something very unlike the frank, manly lad that I had known. It left a feeling of horror in my mind. But when a man has been soldering for a year or two with Brother Boer as a playmate, okay, so now he's referring to the enemy as his playmates, he keeps his nerve and acts quickly. So he acted as a soldier. Godfrey had hardly vanished before I was at the window. There was an awkward catch, and I was some little time before I could throw it up. So the catch is the window catch, you know, the lever that closes the window, kind of the lock on the window. So those old-fashioned windows, they had like a lever and you locked it, and that would be the catch. So it took some time before I could open it. Then I nipped through and ran down the garden path in the direction that I thought he might have taken. It was a long path and the light was not very good. He did say it was a half moon, but it seemed to me something was moving ahead of me. I ran on and called his name, but it was no use. When I got to the end of the path, there were several others branching in different directions to various outhouses. I stood hesitating, and as I did so, I heard distinctly the sound of a closing door. It was not behind me in the house, but ahead of me, somewhere in the darkness. That was enough, Mr. Holmes, to assure me that what I had seen was not a vision. This was a person opening and closing real doors. Godfrey had run away from me, and he had shut a door behind him. Of that, I was certain. There was nothing more I could do, and I spent an uneasy night turning the matter over in my mind, thinking about it, looking at it from all angles, and trying to find some theory which would cover the facts. Next day, I found the colonel rather more conciliatory. So, there was something strange. He seemed nicer, almost like he wanted to pacify me. And as his wife remarked that there were some places of interest in the neighborhood, it gave me an opening. It gave me a chance to ask whether my presence for one more night would incommode them. So whether it would be a burden, whether I would be an inconvenience, whether it would inconvenience them. I've never heard the word incommode before, but look at what I just did. I read the sentence and I tried to put in synonyms that would still keep the sentence logical. Let's see if I was right or if I'm completely wrong. Inconvenience. Fantastic. So when you don't know a word, read the sentence and think of what other words could fit in that space and keep it all nice and logical. A somewhat grudging acquiescence from the old man. So they didn't say, yeah, we're so excited you can stay. It was like grudging, like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Gave me a clear day in which to make my observations. So now I had an extra day in which I could observe what's going on. I was already perfectly convinced that Godfrey was in hiding somewhere near, but where and why remained to be solved. The house was so large and so rambling that a regiment might be hid away in it and no one the wiser, so a regiment of soldiers. If the secret lay there, it was difficult for me to penetrate it. It's such a big house. But the door which I had heard close was certainly not in the house. I must explore the garden and see what I could find. There was no difficulty in the way, for the old people were busy in their own fashion and left me to my own devices. Left me to do whatever I wanted to do, left me to amuse myself. They didn't really entertain me in any way. And they were busy in their own fashion doing their stuff. There were several small outhouses, but at the end of the garden, there was a detached building of some size, large enough for a gardener's or a gamekeeper's residence. Could this be the place whence the sound of that shutting door had come? Whence? From where? Whence? I approached it in a careless fashion, as though I was strolling aimlessly round the grounds. As I did so, a small, brisk, bearded man in a black coat and bowler hat, not at all the gardener type, came out the door. To my surprise, he locked it after him and put the key in his pocket. Then he looked at me with some surprise on his face. "Are you a visitor here?" he asked. I explained that I was, and that I was a friend of Godfrey's. What a pity that he should be away on his travels, for he would have so liked to see me, I continued. Quite so, exactly, said he with a rather guilty air, so he's clearly lying. No doubt you will renew your visit at some more propitious time. Now, guess what propitious means. Did you say a better time? Perfect. He passed on, but when I turned, I observed that he was standing watching me, half concealed by the laurels at the far end of the garden. So he continued walking But when I turned, I saw that he was watching me, kind of hiding at the far end of the garden, and the laurels would be the shrubs, plants, maybe even a little bay tree, kind of a shrub. The way I know laurel is the laurel wreath. You know, it's the Greek one that's a laurel, so it obviously comes from a shrub. I had a good look at the little house as I passed it, but the windows were heavily curtained, and so far as one could see, it was empty. I might spoil my own game and even be ordered off the premises if I were too audacious. Love this word. Audacious. We're going to talk about it, for I was still conscious that I was being watched. Therefore, I strolled back to the house and waited for night before I went on with my inquiry. When all was dark and quiet, I slipped out of my window and made my way as silently as possible to the mysterious lodge. So he looked at the house. He made a good note of the house. The windows were covered with heavy curtains. It seemed to be empty. But I also realized that I was being watched. So I needed to be careful, because if I went too far, I might be asked to leave. I might be ordered off the premises. So I said, if I went too far. So let's see what audacious means. If you take bold risks, if you show a lack of respect. Okay, so if you go too far, right? I have said that it was heavily curtained, but now I found that the windows were shuttered as well. Some light, however, was breaking through one of them, so I concentrated my attention upon this. I was in luck, for the curtain had not been quite closed, and there was a crack in the shutter, so that I could see the inside of the room. It was a cheery place enough, a bright lamp, a blazing fire. Opposite to me was seated the little man whom I had seen in the morning. He was smoking a pipe and reading a paper. What do you think is going on here? What do you think happened to Godfrey? Why is he deathly pale? And does it have anything to do with being shot with an elephant gun? I'd love to know your thoughts. Comment below. What paper? I asked. My client seemed annoyed at the interruption of his narrative. Can it matter? He asked. So Sherlock asked the strange question. It is most essential. I really took no notice. Possibly you observed whether it was a broad-leafed paper or of that smaller type which one associates with weeklies, weekly newspapers. Now that you mention it, it was not large. It might have been the Spectator. However, I had little thought to spare upon such details. I mean, come on. I didn't notice these details. Why? Because a second man was seated with his back to the window, and I could swear that this second man was Godfrey. I could not see his face, but I knew the familiar slope of his shoulders. I knew his posture. He was leaning upon his elbow in an attitude of great melancholy, his body turned towards the fire. I was hesitating as to what I should do when there was a sharp tap on my shoulder, and there was Colonel Emsworth beside me. Uh-oh, he got caught. What happens next? This way, sir, said he in a low voice. He walked in silence to the house, and I followed him into my own bedroom. He had picked up a timetable in the hall. There's a train to London at 8:30, he said he. The trap will be at the door at 8. The trap? Oh, here we go back to our carriage. Do you remember what a trap was? The carriage? How many wheels? 2, with a horse or pony. Well done. He was white with rage, and indeed I felt myself in so difficult a position that I could only stammer a few incoherent apologies in which I tried to excuse myself by urging my anxiety for my friend. He was incandescent with rage, white with rage. He was seeing red. All these color idioms. I didn't know what to do. I was in such an awkward position. I just stammered out a few apologies like, hey, I'm sorry, I was just worried about my friend. I was anxious about my friend. Excuse my behavior. It was all done in good faith, that kind of thing. The matter will not bear discussion. We will not talk about this. We will not discuss it, said he abruptly. You have made a most damnable intrusion into the privacy of our family. You were here as a guest, and you have become a spy. I have nothing more to say, sir, except save that I have no wish ever to see you again. Save, except. Okay? At this, I lost my temper, Mr. Holmes, and I spoke with some warmth. So, normally when we say I spoke warmly to someone, it's kindly, but here it seems that I got heated. I got angry. I spoke with some warmth, with some anger, with some passion, with some fury. I have seen your son, and I am convinced that for some reason of your own, you are concealing him from the world. I have no idea what your motives are in cutting him off in this fashion, but I am sure he is no longer a free agent. I warn you, Colonel Emsworth, that until I am assured as to the safety and well-being of my friend, I shall never desist. I shall never stop in my efforts to get to the bottom of the mystery, and I shall certainly not allow myself to be intimidated by anything which you may say or do. Wow, that was passionate, and that was a lot. I'm convinced that you're hiding him from the world. I don't know what your intentions are, what your motives are, what your reasons are, but I know that he's not a free man. So I'm warning you that I am concerned about my friend's well-being. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to find out what's really going on. And I won't be intimidated by you. You don't scare me. The old fellow looked diabolical, and I really thought he was going to attack me. So, diabolical, diablo, evil. The characteristics of the devil, diablo. I love words that are Latin-based. You have no idea where the root word is Latin. I just love it. I don't think anything gives me as much joy or pleasure as English. I truly love the language, not just as a native speaker, but I like to find all those links and connections, especially to Latin words, the root words. I've always loved languages. And my mother was fluent in Latin, which is the strangest thing because who speaks Latin, right? It's a language that's dead, but it's such a beautiful, beautiful language. Are you ready for more? Okay. I have said that he was a gaunt, fierce old giant, and though I am no weakling, I was a soldier, I might have been hard put to it to hold my own against him. He would have been quite an adversary. He was, I would have had to put in quite an effort if he decided to beat me up. However, after a long glare of rage, he turned upon his heel, he turned around and walked out of the room. For my part, I took the appointed train in the morning with the full intention of coming straight to you and asking for your advice and assistance at the appointment for which I had already written. So that was my intention. Such was the problem which my visitor laid before me. It presented, as the astute reader will already have perceived, few difficulties in its solution, for a very limited choice of alternatives must get to the root of the matter. Still, elementary as it was, there were points of interest and novelty about it, which may excuse my placing it upon record. I now proceeded, using my familiar method of logical analysis, to narrow down the possible solutions. So my visitor told me all of this, and I thought about it logically. What were the possible solutions? So the servants, I asked how many were in the house. To the best of my belief, there were only the old butler and his wife. They seemed to live in the simplest fashion. There was no servant then in the detached house, none, unless the little man with the beard acted as such. He seemed, however, to be quite a superior person. I mean, with the bowler hat and so on. What do you think his profession was? I don't think he was a servant. I don't think he was a butler. I have a feeling that he was a doctor of some kind. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. That seems very suggestive. Have you any indication that food was conveyed, taken from the house, from the one house to the other? Now that you mention it, I did see old Ralph carrying a basket down the garden walk and going in the direction of this house. The idea of food did not occur to me at the moment. Did you make any local inquiries? Yes, I did. I spoke to the station master and also to the innkeeper in the village. The inn would be like the hotel, very, very small, more like a bed and breakfast. I simply asked if he knew anything of my old comrade, Godfrey Emsworth. Both of them assured me that he had gone for a voyage round the world. He had come home and then had almost at once started off again, hit the road again, left again. The story was evidently universally accepted, so it seemed that everyone believed this story. You said nothing of your suspicions? You didn't tell them that you were suspicious, that you thought something else was going on? No, nothing. That was very wise. The matter should certainly be inquired into. I will go back with you to Tuxbury Old Park. Today, it happened at that moment I was clearing up the case which my friend Watson had described as that of the Abbey School, in which the Duke of Greyminster was so deeply involved. I had also a commission from the Sultan of Turkey which called for immediate action, as political consequences of the gravest kind might arise from its neglect. Grave, serious. Therefore, it was not until the beginning of the next week, as my diary records, that as I was able to start forth on my mission to Bedfordshire in company with Mr. James M. Dodd. As we drove to Euston, we picked up a grave and taciturn gentleman of iron grey aspect with whom I had made the necessary arrangements. Grave, serious, taciturn, reserved, uncommunicative. He says very little. Taciturn. This is an old friend, said I to Dodd. It is possible that his presence may be entirely unnecessary, and on the other hand, it may be essential. It is not necessary at the present stage to go further into the matter. The narratives of Watson have accustomed the reader, no doubt, to the fact that I do not waste words or disclose my thoughts while a case is actually under consideration. So, the reader, you, me, we know from Watson's stories that Sherlock doesn't waste words. He doesn't also tell people what's on his mind. He doesn't disclose his thoughts while the case is being solved. Dodd seemed surprised, but nothing more was said, and the three of us continued our journey together. In the train, I asked Dot one more question, which I wished our companion to hear. You say that you saw your friend's face quite clearly at the window, so clearly that you are sure of his identity. I have no doubt about it whatever. His nose was pressed against the glass. The lamplight shone full upon him. It could have been someone resembling him. No, it was he. But you say he was changed? Only in color. His face was, how shall I describe it? It was of fish belly whiteness. It was bleached. Was it equally pale all over? I think not. It was his brow which I saw so clearly as it was pressed against the window. Did you call to him? I was too startled and horrified for the moment. Then I pursued him, as I have told you, but without result. My case was practically complete, and there was only one small incident needed to round it off. Really? Really? He solved it? Okay, what do you think is going on? I'd love to know your thoughts. Put it in the comments below. When after a considerable drive, we arrived at the strange, old, rambling, what was the other word that they used? Wandering house, which my client had described. It was Ralph, the elderly butler, who opened the door. I had requisitioned the carriage for the day and had asked my elderly friend to remain within it unless we should summon him. So the third person wasn't going to join them for now. Unless we should summon him, summon someone, call for someone. Ralph, a little wrinkled old fellow, was in the conventional costume of black coat and pepper and salt trousers, with only one curious variant. He wore brown leather gloves, which at sight of us he instantly shuffled off, laying them down on the hall table as we passed in. So, he was wearing a black coat, salt and pepper and salt trousers, so striped trousers, but his gloves were brown leather gloves. This was the curious variant. This was something strange. I have, as my friend Watson may have remarked, an abnormally acute set of senses. And a faint but incisive scent was apparent. It seemed to center on the whole table. I turned, placed my hat there, knocked it off, stooped to pick it up, and planned to bring my nose within a foot of the gloves, a foot 30 centimeters, very close to. Yet it was undoubtedly from them that the curious tarry odor was oozing. Tarry? I wonder what it means. Covered with tar. So not tarry, tarry odor. Tarry means to waste time, tarry for a while. This is tarry. So the odor was like tar and it was oozing. What a beautiful verb, oozing. I passed on into the study with my case complete. Alas, that I should have to show my hand so when I tell my own story. It was by concealing such links in the chain that Watson was enabled to produce his meretricious finales. Meretricious. Apparently attractive, but having no real value. Meretricious. Very interesting. Colonel Emsworth was not in his room, but he came quickly enough on receipt of Ralph's message. We heard his quick, heavy step in the passage. The door was flung open, and he rushed in with bristling beard and twisted features, as terrible an old man as ever I have seen. He held our cards in his hand, and he tore them up and stamped on the fragments. Have I not told you, you infernal busybody, that you are warned off the premises. Never dare to show your damned face here again. If you enter again without my leave, I shall be within my rights. If I use violence, I'll shoot you, sir. By God, I will. And as to you, sir, turning upon me, I extend the same warning to you. I am familiar with your ignoble profession, but you must take your reputed talents to some other field. There is no opening for them here. Ignoble? Not honorable. Wow. Of humble origin or social status. So, ignoble, yeah, I knew that it meant not good, but why would he call Holmes' profession ignoble? Okay, but basically what he's saying is that to the first person, that he would shoot him if he ever showed up again, and he would be within his rights because he's been warned repeatedly. And then he turns to Sherlock Holmes and says to him, "You're not wanted here. I know about your reputation. I know how talented you are, but there's no opening for them here. There's no need for you. We don't need your detective skills here." "I cannot leave here," said my client firmly, "until I hear from Godfrey's own lips that he is under no restraint. I need to speak to Godfrey. I need Godfrey to tell me that he's here of his own free will, that he is not your prisoner." Our involuntary host rang the bell. Involuntary because he's not really their host. Holmes is being sarcastic here. He's being forced into the position of a host. "Ralph," he said, "telephone down to the county police and ask the inspector to send up 2 constables. Tell him there are burglars in the house." "One moment," said I. "You must be aware, Mr. Dodd, that Colonel Emsworth is within his rights and that we have no legal status within his house. On the other hand, he should recognize that your action is prompted entirely by solicitude for his son. He should understand that the only reason you're doing this is because you care about his son. Solicitude. Caring. I venture to hope that if we were allowed to have 5 minutes conversation with Colonel Emsworth, I could certainly alter his view of the matter. All we need is 5 minutes." "I am not so easily altered. Altered, convinced," said the soldier. "Ralph, do what I have told you. What the devil are you waiting for? Ring up the police." "Nothing of the sort," I said, putting my back to the door. "Any police interference would bring about the very catastrophe which you dread, which you are afraid of, which you don't want to happen. Catastrophe? Something really, really bad." I took out my notebook and scribbled one word upon a loose sheet of paper. "That," said I, as I handed it to Colonel Emsworth, "is what has brought us here." He stared at the writing with a face from which every expression, save except amazement, had vanished. "How do you know?" he gasped, sitting down heavily in his chair. "It is my business to know things. That is my trade, my job, my profession." He sat in deep thought, his gaunt hand tugging at his strangling beard. Then he made a gesture of resignation. "Well, if you wish to see Godfrey, you shall. It is no doing of mine, but you have forced my hand. Ralph, tell Mr. Godfrey and Mr. Kent that in 5 minutes we shall be with them." At the end of that time, we passed down the garden path and found ourselves in front of the mystery house at the end. A small bearded man stood at the door with a look of considerable astonishment upon his face. "This is very sudden, Colonel Emsworth," said he. "This will disarrange all our plans." So this is going to, we have plans, and this is going to mess up our plans. And there's a lovely English idiom. You've got to grab your notebook and write this one down. Throw a spanner in the works. It's going to disarrange all our plans. It's going to throw a spanner in the works. It's going to mess up our plans. I can't help it, Mr. Kent. Our hands have been forced. They've forced our hands. They've forced us into this situation. Can Mr. Godfrey see us? Yes, he's waiting inside. He turned and led us into a plainly furnished front room. A man was standing with his back to the fire, and at the sight of him, my client sprang forward with outstretched hand. "Why, Godfrey, old man, this is fine. This is great. This is wonderful." But the other waved him back. "Don't touch me, Jimmy. Keep your distance. Yes, you may well stare. I don't quite look the smart Lance Corporal Emsworth of B Squadron, do I?" His appearance was certainly extraordinary. One could see that he had indeed been a handsome man with clear-cut features, sunburned by an African sun, but mottled in patches over this darker surface were curious whitish patches which had bleached his skin. It's starting to feel like a Michael Jackson situation. "That's why I don't court visitors. That's why I don't allow visitors," said he. "I don't mind you, Jimmy, but I could have done without your friend. It would have been better if your friend hadn't arrived. I suppose there is some good reason for it, but you have me at a disadvantage. I'm sure there's a good reason why you brought this man, but I don't mind seeing you. I don't mind you seeing me like this, but I'm not very comfortable with this stranger seeing me in this situation. I wanted to be sure that all was well with you, Godfrey. I saw you that night when you looked into my window, and I could not let the matter rest till I had cleared things up. Old Ralph told me you were there, and I couldn't help taking a peep at you. I hoped you would not have seen me, and I had to run to my burrow when I heard the window go up. But what in heaven's name is the matter?" "Well, it's not a long story to tell," said he, lighting a cigarette. "You remember that morning fight at Buffelsprate outside Pretoria on the Eastern Railway line? You heard I was hit?" "Once again, South Africa." "Yes, I heard, but I never got particulars, the details. 3 of us got separated from the others. It was very broken country, you may remember. There was the Simpson, the fellow we call Baldy Simpson, and Anderson and I. We were clearing Brother Boer, but he lay low and got the 3 of us. The other 2 were killed. I got an elephant bullet through my shoulder. I stuck onto my horse, however, and he galloped several miles before I fainted and rolled off the saddle." This is one of those times where I actually had an idea. Remember, I said it earlier, the elephant bullet. But what about the elephant bullet caused the situation? When I came to myself, when I regained consciousness, it was nightfall, and I raised myself up, feeling very weak and ill. To my surprise, there was a house close beside me, a fairly large house, with a broad stoep with many windows. Stoep. This is a proper Afrikaans word, stoep. It's a porch. It's a terrace. It's a veranda. I'm not sure if veranda is British English, but it's a stoep. It's a stoep. It's Afrikaans. I love it. It was deadly cold. You remember the kind of numb cold which used to come at evening, a deadly, sickening sort of cold, very different from a crisp, healthy frost. Well, I was chilled to the bone, and my only hope seemed to lie in reaching that house. I staggered to my feet and dragged myself along, hardly conscious of what I did. I have a dim memory, not a clear memory, a dim memory of slowly ascending the steps, climbing up the steps, entering a wide-opened door, passing into a large room which contained several beds, and throwing myself down with a gasp of satisfaction upon one of them. It was unmade, but that troubled me not at all. I drew the clothes over my shivering body, and in a moment I was in a deep sleep. It was morning when I wakened, and it seemed to me that instead of coming out into a world of sanity, I had emerged into some extraordinary nightmare. The African sun flooded through the big curtainless windows, and every detail of the great, bare, whitewashed dormitory stood out, hard and clear. In front of me was standing a small, dwarf-like man with a huge, bulbous head, who was jabbering, speaking, jabber, 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 jabbering excitedly in Dutch, waving two horrible hands which looked to me like brown sponges. He sounds like Shrek. By the way, are you a fan of Shrek? I love Shrek. I love the movies. Behind him stood a group of people who seemed to be intensely amused by the situation. But a chill came over me as I looked at them. Not one of them was a normal human being. Everyone was twisted or swollen or disfigured in some strange way. The laughter of these strange monstrosities was a dreadful thing to hear. Wow, I didn't expect this. So there are these dwarves, these monster-like creatures. Every one of them is disfigured. And the way they laughed probably sounded like a cackle. And it was a terrible, dreadful, horrible thing to hear. It seemed to me that none of them could speak English, but the situation wanted clearing up. I needed the situation explained. For the creature with the big head was growing furiously angry and uttering wild beast cries. He had laid his deformed hands upon me and was dragging me out of bed, regardless of the fresh flow of blood from my wound. I was bleeding and he was still dragging me. The little monster was as strong as a bull, and I don't know what he might have done to me had not an elderly man who was clearly in authority been attracted to the room by the hubbub. So this other man came into the room, he heard all the noise, and he came in. The hubbub, the drama, the chaos, the noise. He said a few stern words in Dutch, and my persecutor, the little monster, shrank away. Then he turned upon me, gazing at me in the utmost amazement. "How in the world did you come here?" he asked in amazement. "Wait a bit. I see that you were tired out and that wounded shoulder of yours wants looking after, so your shoulder needs to be attended to. I am a doctor, and I'll soon have you tied up. By man alive, you are in far greater danger here than you ever were on the battlefield. You are in the leper hospital, and you have slept in a leper's bed. And a leper is someone who is suffering from leprosy, and these people are shunned by society. And that would also be a social leper, but these people actually are lepers. Need I tell you more, Jimmy? It seems that in view of the approaching battle, all these poor creatures had been evacuated the day before. Then, as the British advanced, they had been brought back by this, their medical superintendent, whom assured me that, though he believed he was immune to the disease, he would nonetheless never have dared to do what I had done. He put me in a private room, treated me kindly, and within a week or so, I was removed to the General Hospital at Pretoria. So there you have my tragedy. I hoped against hope, but it was not until I had reached home that the terrible signs which you see upon my face told me that I had not escaped. What was I to do? I was in this lonely house. We had 2 servants whom we could utterly trust. There was a house where I could live. Under pledge of secrecy, Mr. Kent, who is a surgeon, was prepared to stay with me. It seemed simple enough on those lines. The alternative was a dreadful one. Segregation for life among strangers with never a hope of release. But absolute secrecy was necessary, for even in this quiet countryside there would have been an outcry, and I should have been dragged to my horrible doom. Even you, Jimmy, even you had to be kept in the dark. Why my father has relented, I cannot imagine. So he explains the situation. He was there with the lepers. He contracted the disease. Then the decision was made. He would live in the house. The 2 servants could be trusted. Mr. Kent, the surgeon, agreed to stay with him. It all seemed quite simple, because what was the alternative? That he would be put into a leper hospital. And he says that even in this quiet countryside, it's a quiet place, but still secrecy was needed. What if someone spoke about it, told the authorities, and then he was dragged away to this leper colony, right? And even you, Jimmy, even you couldn't be told. And I'm not sure why my father finally relented, finally agreed to tell you the truth. And then Colonel Emsworth pointed to me. This is the gentleman who forced my hand. If you force someone's hand, you force them to do what you want. He unfolded the scrap of paper on which I had written the word leprosy. It seemed to me that if he knew so much as that, it was safer that he should know all. Now let's look at what leprosy is. It's a contagious disease, so that means you can catch it from someone else. It affects the skin, the mucous membranes, and the nerves. It causes discoloration and lumps on the skin, and in severe cases, disfigurement and deformities. And it's now mainly confined to tropical Africa and Asia. Okay. How in the world did you come here? He asked in amazement. Oh, sorry. And so it was, said I. Who knows, but good may come of it. I understand that only Mr. Kent has seen the patient. May I ask, sir, if you are an authority on such complaints, which are, I understand, tropical or semi-tropical in their nature? I have the ordinary knowledge of the educated medical man, he observed with some stiffness. So he seems a little bit annoyed by the question. Maybe he feels like he's being challenged. I have no doubt, sir, that you are fully competent, but I am sure that you will agree that in such a case, a second opinion is valuable. You have avoided this, I understand, for fear that pressure should be put upon you to segregate the patient. So to remove the patient from society, to isolate him, to put him away, to segregate, to set him apart. Isolate. That is so, said Colonel Emsworth. I foresaw the situation, I explained, and I have brought with me a friend whose discretion may absolutely be trusted. His discretion, he is discreet, he will not say a word. I was once able to do him a professional service, and he is ready to advise as a friend rather than as a specialist. His name is Sir James Saunders. The prospect of an interview with Lord Roberts would not have excited greater wonder and pleasure in a raw subaltern than was now reflected upon the face of Mr. Kent. What is a subaltern? Subaltern. I shall indeed be proud, he murmured. Then I will ask Sir James to step this way. He is at present in the carriage outside the door. Meanwhile, Colonel Emsworth, we may perhaps assemble in your study, get together, in your study where I could give the necessary explanations. Assemble. So when people get together in a space, assembly. I'm not sure if you guys had this at school. We did. Every Friday morning, we had an assembly. All the students from the school would get into the main hall. The principal would tell us, I don't know, some random stuff that none of us really listened to. And every now and then, someone had to give a speech. And yeah, you guessed it, I was one of those students giving speeches because I just loved it. So, assembly, they're going to assemble in the study. And here it is that I miss my Watson. By cunning questions and ejaculations of wonder, he could elevate my simple art, which is but systemize common sense into a prodigy. So my job, it's really just common sense. It's just logical. But Watson makes it seem magical. He turns me into a prodigy. I'm a genius. So prodigy, what a beautiful word. A prodigy is a young person with exceptional qualities. So Mozart was a prodigy. When I tell my story, I have no such aid. I mean, it's boring. And yet I will give my process of thought even as I gave it to my small audience, which included Godfrey's mother in the study of Colonel Elmsworth. That process, says I, starts upon the supposition that when you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. It may well be that several explanations remain, in which case one tries test after test and one until one or other of them has a convincing amount of support. We will now apply this principle to the case in point. As it was first presented to me, there were three possible explanations of the seclusion or incarceration, incarcerate, imprison, okay, of this gentleman in an outhouse of his father's mansion. There was the explanation that he was in hiding for a crime, or that he was mad and that they wished to avoid an asylum, or that he had some disease which caused his segregation. I could think of no other adequate solutions. These then had to be sifted, had to be weighed, had to be analyzed and balanced against each other. The criminal's solution would not bear inspection. That didn't make sense. No unsolved crime had been reported from that district. So there was no crime. He wasn't a criminal in hiding. I was sure of that. If it was some crime not yet discovered, then clearly it would be to the interest of the family to get rid of the delinquent, the person who committed the crime. This is a lovely word. It's usually a young person who commits a crime. Sometimes it's a minor crime, and we often say teenage delinquents. Okay. And send him abroad rather than keep him concealed at home. I could see no explanation for such a line of conduct. So, no crime had been reported, so they weren't hiding him because of a crime. But, let's wait. What if there had been a crime, but it hadn't been discovered yet? Well, then the logical thing to do would have been to send him abroad to another country so he could not be caught. Next one. Insanity was more plausible. This made more sense. The presence of the second person in the outhouse suggested a keeper. So this person was insane and he needed someone to take care of him, and that was the keeper. The fact that he locked the door when he came out strengthened the supposition, the idea, the hypothesis, and gave the idea of constraint. On the other hand, this constraint could not be severe, or the young man could not have got loose and come down to have a look at his friend. So perhaps he were insane, and that's why he was being locked up, but he wasn't really being locked up, was he? Because he was able to go and see Jimmy at that window. You will remember, Mr. Dodd, that I felt round for points asking you, for example, about the paper which Mr. Kent was reading. Had it been the Lancet or the British Medical Journal, it would have helped me. It is not illegal, however, to keep a lunatic upon private premises so long as there is a qualified person in attendance and that the authorities have been duly notified. Why then all this desperate desire for secrecy? Once again, I could not get the theory to fit the facts. Now, if he had been insane, it's okay for him to have been kept on the family premises with a caregiver, with a doctor, a qualified person. And if the authorities were notified, all good. I mean, it's not illegal to do this. So why were they hiding this if he were truly just insane and he had a doctor in attendance? They were not breaking the law in any way. There remained the third possibility, into which, rare and unlikely as it was, everything seemed to fit. Leprosy is not uncommon in my country, South Africa. Well, maybe in the past, but I don't think we have a problem with leprosy in 2025. No, I don't. But anyway, by some extraordinary chance, this youth might have contracted it. His people would be placed in a very dreadful position, since they would desire to save him from segregation. Great secrecy would be needed to prevent rumors from getting about and subsequent interference by the authorities. A devoted medical man, if sufficiently paid, if he was paid well, would easily be found to take charge of the sufferer. There would be no reason why the latter should not be allowed freedom after dark. Bleaching of the skin is a common result of the disease. The case was a strong one, so strong that I determined to act as if it were actually proved. When, on arriving here, I noticed that Ralph, who carries out the meals, had gloves which were impregnated with disinfectants, my last doubts were removed. A single word showed you, sir, that your secret was discovered. And if I wrote rather than said it, it was to prove to you that my discretion was to be trusted. So Holmes is saying he acted under the hypothesis, under the understanding that it definitely was leprosy. Then he found the facts to validate his point of view. So he noticed that Ralph's gloves had these disinfectants, and for some reason, that proved that it was leprosy. Then he wrote the word leprosy on the piece of paper and gave it to the colonel. He wrote it rather than said it to show that he was being respectful, he was being discreet, he was able to keep a secret. I was finishing this little analysis of the case when the door was opened and the austere figure of the great dermatologist was ushered in, so the guy who was in the trap. But for once, his sphinx-like features had relaxed and there was a warm humanity in his eyes. He strode up to Colonel Emsworth and shook him by the hand. It is often my lot, it is often my job to bring ill tidings and seldom good. Yeah, I'm a doctor. It's often my duty, my lot in life, my place in life, my position in life, to bring ill tidings, bad news, ill tidings, bad news, and seldom good. This occasion is more welcome. It is not leprosy. What? A well-marked case of pseudo-leprosy or ichthyosis? A scale-like affection of the skin, unsightly, obstinate, but possibly curable, and certainly non-infective. Yes, Mr. Holmes, the coincidence is a remarkable one, but is it a coincidence? Are there not subtle forces at work of which we know little? Are we assured that the apprehension from which this young man has no doubt suffered terribly since his exposure to its contagion may not produce a physical effect which simulates that which it fears. Ah, interesting. Is it psychosomatic? Where your mind tricks your body into believing that it has something. So, when he found out about the leprosy, his mind acted in such a way that it believed that he had contracted leprosy. And then his body manifested those signs. I think it's psychosomatic. If I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me. Tell me what the medical term is. If we've got any doctors in the house watching this, please tell me what it is. I do think it's psychosomatic, where your mind tricks your body into then exhibiting those symptoms. At any rate, I pledge my professional reputation. But the lady has fainted. I think that Mr. Kent had better be with her until she recovers from this joyous shock. And coming up next, which is why you need to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, The Adventure of the Retired Colorman. Okay. Oh, beautiful people. That is a wrap. That was another long reading, but it was a very enjoyable reading. Like I said before in other videos, it takes a good couple hours to read and to explain. If you're wondering how long it would take me to read the short story without recording and the explanations, I could do it in probably 30 or 40 minutes, but I do love reading it. I love explaining it to you guys. And I love talking about it, even if I am talking to myself, which is why I need you guys to join the conversation and comment below. So, if you're enjoying this, please do take a moment to like and subscribe. Share it with a friend. Not only are you improving your reading skills and your listening skills, you're definitely improving your vocabulary. I try to tackle all of the less familiar phrases, the ones that you are really going to struggle with. And I hope that helps. If it does, please do let me know in the comments. And I guess that's it for now. I'm ready for a hot cup of tea, probably with some honey, because my throat is a little raw. Thank you for joining me. And as usual, I'm Naps, and it is ciao for now. I hope the next time you guys see me, my hand is healed. But it's just ciao for now. You will see me soon. Bye.